It's been approximately a year since I made the video about why I quit van life. And while I was reading the comments, there were three types of people. The first type of people are the weekenders. These are people who bought the van with the intentions of traveling in it a few times per month. And then you have the full-time van lifer that decided to do this because they just wanted to travel long term, maybe for a couple of months, maybe an entire year. Who knows? However, they did this because they had a choice, not because they had to do this. And the third type of person was the homeless type. Because they don't have a choice, unfortunately, they can't live in a home or an apartment because it's too expensive, so the van is a better option than living on the street. However, the video that I made was to simply share my story about how I got into van life, why I decided to quit van life, and it was personally my story. It wasn't necessarily to reflect a bad light on van life. However, some people watched that video and they might have gotten scared, or they decided it was just not a good idea to begin with. As for me, I decided to do van life because I wanted to travel long term. As a matter of fact, I did van life for an entire 8 months. Some of you might think that's a lot. Some of you might think it's just a drop in the bucket because you've been doing this for a decade or a couple of years or longer. Completely understandable. However, I sold all my belongings, moved into this tiny little Cascade camper van with my dog, and we had the time of our lives. I have absolutely no regrets doing it. However, I had to quit van life because my business wasn't doing well, and I got tired of living inside of a tiny van with my dog. And as you can imagine, along with all the issues I was facing living in a tiny little van, moving around constantly and having to look for a bathroom and all that other stuff that came with van life. And by van life, I mean either it's a van, a truck, or maybe a school bus or something that has amenities inside that emulates living in an apartment or a home. The first group of people are people who find it absolutely necessary to live inside of a van because, as I mentioned before, it's better than living on the street. You might be recently divorced, or you broke up with your partner and you have absolutely no cash, so it's better to live inside of your truck. Or you might have a van and you can convert it and live inside of that while you save up some money to integrate back into normal life. Or you're someone who has lost your job and now you feel hopeless and directionless in life and you have absolutely no savings, and living in an apartment or home is too expensive at the moment. So the best idea is to move into a van or maybe your truck in order to save up some money, get your life back together, and then integrate back into society. And then, of course, you also have seniors. They lack resources. The only thing that they have is Social Security. However, in today's environment, it's just not enough to pay for rent, food, and everything else that comes with it. So living inside of a van is a real necessity, and it's way safer than living on the street. So a van is definitely an ideal situation. The second group of people are travelers. And I would put myself in that category as well. This is why I bought my van. As a traveler, you have a full-time job, a business, or a steady income. But you like to travel a few times per year, and you probably have a primary vehicle as well, and the van is just your secondary vehicle. But if you're someone like me that had a Cascade camper, it could probably be used as your primary vehicle as well. So if you have a business like I did, or maybe you're a traveling nurse, then getting into van life is definitely an option for you. Personally, I sold all my belongings and moved into this tiny little van. I'm pretty much a minimalist and I really don't need a lot of stuff. So the van was the perfect size for me and my dog for the amount of time that we spent in it. But that being said, the traveler has a choice to integrate back into normal life, and this is not something that is a necessity like the first group we talked about. And the third group are the weekenders. This is what the Cascade camper that I purchased was actually designed for. It wasn't designed to live in it, but I proved that it can be lived inside of. Although I don't recommend it permanently though, because it is very small. As a weekender, you like to go away a few times per month, or maybe you like to go away on long trips a few times per year. Sometimes, like me, you can park next to the ocean or maybe a lake or somewhere that has very nice scenery, make yourself lunch or breakfast, but your van is a tiny little home away from home, so it makes you feel really comfortable. And then the fourth group are what I like to call the savers, the entrepreneurs, or the people that are in debt. If you're in debt, living in a van is the ideal way because you're saving a lot of money, but meanwhile you can pay off all your debt. But if you're an entrepreneur like me, you can bootstrap and make living really, really cheap and inexpensive because the van is not something that you need to pay rent on unless you have to make monthly payments. But of course, let's not forget that if your van is not brand new, it does need to be maintained, so that could be considered part of your rent. However, living inside of a van and starting a business is an ideal situation for a lot of people, especially if it's an online-based business, because you can get all your work done in a laptop while getting internet from a coffee shop next door. And last but not least, the savers. They want to live inside of a van or a truck because they want to save for a home or a rainy day. They have absolutely no savings, but they're ambitious and they want to travel a little bit and save some money, maybe because they want to save for a rainy day or maybe because they want to buy a home. And this is an ideal situation for them. And now let's talk about some of the positives of van life. And then after we're done, we're going to talk about the negatives as well. Living in a van is very, very economical. When I bought my van, I bought it brand new, so it had absolutely no maintenance. So if you can get a brand new van or something that is relatively new and you have no maintenance, it's very, very economical because it's a one and done deal. As you know, apartments are relatively expensive these days. Here in San Diego, it's about $2,700 to $3,000 per month for a one bedroom. It's really, really ridiculous. So vans are going to be a lot cheaper. Besides that, van life is for a minimalist. If you're not a minimalist, you will become one. I absolutely guarantee you. The van is very small. It doesn't have a lot of space, so you're going to have to deal with a whole lot less. But the good news is you shop a whole lot less, and when you look at something, you're like, do I really need that? Most of the time, the decision is no. Trust me on that. And then the cool thing about van life is that it's a different type of travel experience. You're inside of a van and it has everything that you need. Hopefully you have your cooking appliances, maybe you have a bathroom in there or not, and then you have running water, electricity. It's pretty much a small little home on wheels. And the sense of freedom that you get from van life is absolutely incredible because you can literally drive anywhere you want. You're taking your home with you wherever you go. That's one of the greatest aspects of van life. And with that being said, van life is kind of like home ownership. And that's one of the cool things that I like about van life, but it could also be a negative as well because as homeowners, if something breaks down, it's up to you to fix it. There's no maintenance crew to come here and help you out. Now let's talk about some of the negatives of van life because there are some negatives as well. When it comes to showers, bathrooms, etc., there are a lot of people that have small little cassette toilets, but I guarantee you that most of the time those things are not used because it requires a lot of maintenance. It's a lot easier to just drive to a location and use the bathroom. However, that does get tiring as well. So you have to pick and choose. Do you want to use the bathroom or facilities inside of your unit? Because cleaning up your own defecation is something that is not ideal, and it's something that I don't like to do. But using someone else's bathroom inside of a store is probably a better choice. However, you have to constantly drive every single time you want to use it. One requires lots of labor, and the other one requires a lot of time. Regardless, both situations are not ideal. The other thing is that van life is really not that easy. It's a lot of work. You have a tiny little space, it constantly gets dirty, and you always have to clean it up. And moving around inside of a tiny little van, depending on the type of person you are and the personality that you have, can feel very, very claustrophobic and lonely. And then of course, people as well as places are really not that van life friendly. Cops will give you tickets and hassle you. And then depending on location and the place that you're in, people might not like van lifers, specifically cops and the people who are in that neighborhood. And then last but not least, you have the weather situation. Sometimes it's too cold, sometimes it's too hot, but very rarely it's ever perfect, unless you're in a place like San Diego. However, it's also becoming increasingly very, very difficult to do that because you stick out like a sore thumb if your van is not very stealthy. If it's too cold and you're really not used to it, you risk getting sick. And if it's too hot, then it's very difficult sleeping and staying inside of the van, so you have to constantly be outside. And so now that we talked about the different types of people that do van life and also the positives and the negatives, the big question is, should you be doing van life in 2023 and beyond? Because as I mentioned before, van life is something that you either have a choice or you don't have a choice. And some people are savers, some people are in debt, and some people are truly homeless, and this is something that they have to do. As I mentioned before, it's been about a year since I made that video, and I've had a lot to think about since that time after reading through all your comments and giving it some time to marinate in my mind. I've come to the conclusion that there's really no right or wrong answer to this. I think van life is all dependent on the type of personality that you have, and it also depends on if you have a choice to do this or not. If you have a choice, I highly recommend that you do van life because it allows you to experience a different way of living, and it allows you to travel inside of a van that may make it really fun for you. But I highly recommend that you keep your apartment or your home. Don't sell everything like I did, because when you go back to your home or apartment, it's going to feel huge after that, and you're going to appreciate everything that you own. But if you're someone who doesn't have a choice, then van life is the ideal situation because it's better than living on the street. Van life was a completely amazing experience, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. As a matter of fact, I've been shopping around for another small little van just like my other one. just so I can do it as a weekender, not to live in it, but as a weekender and also keep my apartment. But regardless, the video that I made was not intended to scare anybody. Also, by now you may have realized that I took a very long break from this channel, and the next couple of videos will be focused directly on people who do van life, and I want to make a couple of helpful videos that will help you out financially. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And until the next episode, I'll see you guys later. Ciao for now.